Hello everyone, my name is Aleksandr Shimanov and today I'm going to be your commentator for this event. Exciting event, I must say. Unfortunately, Evgeny Miroshnichenko couldn't make it today, so we're going to follow the games with you and me will follow the games together. So first of all, I must say that the tournament is pretty strong, and especially the older sections. Under 18 won, bunch of GMs, and there was a huge upset yesterday, which I wanted to talk about. The Ukrainian GM Kirill Shevchenko lost to a relatively unknown player from Peru, Haple Ramirez, and the Peruvian player is only 21-17, while Kirill is almost 2600 and he just won the Ukrainian Blitz Championship, so that was a huge upset, and that's probably the most exciting event which happened yesterday. But today we're going to follow the quarterfinals, and there are basically no weaker player left, so we also have one GM versus GM match, and the games will start any minute. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask, and let's cover the pairings for today. So the first and probably the most interesting section is the guys under 18, open section under 18. So first match is Isipenko against Iranian player Madi Galami Orimi, who is 24-28. Not as strong, of course, as Andrei Isipenko, but in rapid games anything can happen. And a few words about Andrei: he's 26-86, probably the most talented player right now in Russia. He's about to break 2700 pretty soon. I have no doubt about that. So he's a clear favorite here, but as we saw yesterday, being the favorite doesn't really mean much, actually. So, and the games just started. So already we have some interesting development in the Isipenko game. He started with d4, and Galami replied with the Dutch defense, so-called Leningrad variation, c4. Knight f6, knight c3, g6. Pretty aggressive opening. And it's interesting to see that Galami claims that he's not really afraid of his higher-rated opponent. And we'll see how it develops. But players are playing very quickly in the opening. So I expect a slightly better position for white after the opening, which is actually in Isipenko style. He's more of a positional player, so we'll see how Galami will handle white's pressure here. And let me refresh it real quick. Because as I can see, players have made a bunch of moves already. So f5, d4, as I said, the Dutch defense, the so-called Leningrad variation. Black puts the bishop on g7, white puts the bishop on g2. And the idea here for black is to play knight d7 and then try to play e5 at some point. So white actually stops this idea by playing d5 himself. So now after e5, he can actually grab this pawn, and that's what Isipenko has done. So he takes on e6, plays b3, puts the bishop on b2, queen e7, queen c2, and now d5. So usually black actually, he doesn't want to rush with d5 because that's a very committal idea. Usually he just keeps the pawn on d6. Instead, black usually plays something like knight c5, rook to d8, trying to cover the d6 weakness. And basically, except that weakness, there's not much to worry about for black. So d5 is an interesting idea. Honestly, I haven't seen this before. And seeing how quickly this was played, I think it's all prepped, and white actually took the pawn on d5, knight takes d5, and now if white won't be able to prove his advantage in the next 2-3 moves, black will comfortably equalize, and looks like Isipenko is already on his own, spending some time, and already 2 minutes advantage for the Iranian player. Let's move on. The second match is probably the most interesting one, since there are two GMs players, and the first one is the Indian one, Inian. I'm sorry in advance if I mispronouncing some of the names. So the guy is 2506, playing against the Armenian GM Aleksandr, who is almost 2600, 2596. And people play this line a lot with h6, d6. The idea for black is to play g5 and try to gain some space on the king side as quickly as possible. So basically, he's not trying to equalize; he's playing for the advantage from basically from move one. And it's been pretty popular. So it's important to notice that white doesn't want a castle yet, because that's what black is looking for. He's looking to play g4, maybe rook g8 at some point, and then attack white's king on the king side. So white keeps the king in the center. Instead, he actually played knight d2. The bishop went to g7 and knight f1. Makes perfect sense, since after black played e5 and then g5, he weakened the f5 square, and that's probably where the knight is heading to. So to g3 or e3 to attack this weak f5 square. So this is going to be a pretty interesting game as well. As we move on, this is a mysterious match to me, since Kepler just beat Shevchenko. As I said, this was the biggest upset of the tournament so far. So he's playing against the Italian master Francesca Sonis, who is 2483. I'm sorry, and looks like Ramirez already messed it up a little bit in the opening. So it was the Nimzo defense. F3 is pretty popular line. So looks like all of the players in this section are very well prepared in the opening. So which is not a surprise, of course. That's already high level chess. So c5 takes e4. So basically, white wants to gain as much space in the center as he can. That's his main idea here. The problem here is that he's got this c3 and c4 weaknesses, which will be there forever, and it's not going to be easy for white to solve this problem. And that's what black is aiming for, to eventually attack mainly the c4 pawn and try to get something going on the queen side. So he plays d6 first, knight h3, and e5. I must say that knight h3 is already sort of a weird move, since usually white wants to put the knight on e2. So instead of knight h3, I believe the main continuation for white here is to put the bishop on d3. And after e5, put the knight on e2. So knight on e2 stands better, in my opinion, than on h3. Of course, the knight is not going to stand on h3 forever. The idea for white is to bring the knight to f2. But I'm still not sure if f2 is such a good square for the knight. So Peruvian player already spending some time in the opening, so I don't think that is his home preparation. So probably I'm assuming he mixed up something in the opening. That's what it feels like. And after e5, white has played d5, attacking the knight on c6. Knight will probably go to a5. As I said, the c4 is the key weakness in white's position. So, and then the idea for black is to play b6, bishop a6. So on the paper, of course, Italian player is a serious favorite in this match. But since Ramirez already beat Ukrainian GM, who is extremely strong, we will pay some serious attention to this match. That's what we should do, I believe. All right, the next one is probably fans' favorite since Nihal is playing in this match. Nihal Serin doesn't really need any introduction. Obviously, he's just 16, I believe, and already a Blitz legend, and his classical rating is 2620, so extremely strong. But his opponent, Justin Wang, he's actually only 1 year younger than Nihal. He's 2447, as we can see. But I can tell you that I have some experience playing against this guy, and the time I played it, he was only 11 or 12, and was already very serious player. So it's not going to be an easy match for Nihal for sure. And the position we have on the board is a very well-known line from the Italian, and players already spending some time. So probably out of the book, both of them, and looks like this position is around equal. So, but as I said, not going to be easy for Nihal for sure. So let's move on to a girls section under 18. Here we have already one game finished. That was quick. So the favorite, Carissa Yip, who I believe is she US Women Champion? I mean, she's pretty strong. There's no doubt about that. Her rating is above 2400, so she's not supposed to win the game that quickly, I believe. B4 and after AB, for some reason, it says that white won the game. Although, obviously, that's just the beginning of the game and the position is pretty sharp. I'm clear. I'm not sure who is better here. But something has happened, and we'll try to figure out what actually happened, because this looks extremely weird. Clearly, black didn't resign in this position, so something must have happened. All right, moving on. We have Indian player Priyanka playing against a Russian player Yelizaveta Solozhenkina. So both girls are above 2200. So actually, the ratings are probably the closest ones in terms of all the matches. So 2263 is Priyanka's rating, and 2271 is Solozhenkina's rating. So that's going to be a pretty close match, very close one. White played knight a3 in this position, attacking the pawn on c4, attacking the c6 is still hanging, but I must say that I'm not sure if white needs to take this pawn on c6, because after he takes it, the diagonal actually opens up, and black will be able to play something like rook b8 and then probably exchange the light square bishops, which is usually not in white's favor in such positions. So white is actually aiming to take the pawn on c4, I believe, and then maybe try to grab the c6 pawn with his knight. Something like knight c4, knight a5, knight c6 comes to mind, and looks like it's not a very pleasant position for black, because I don't really see how you can protect all the weaknesses on the queen side. So looks like Priyanka is doing well here in this match. All right, the next one is Talia Cervantes. She represents the US. Actually, I know her very well. She used to attend Webster University team meetings, and very hardworking girl. So I'm glad to see her at the top of the table here. And she's playing against, I believe, the French player. Let me double check this. No, she's actually a Canadian player. Again, I'm not really sure how to pronounce it. I'll say Ole. And the Canadian player is 2257. Talia Cervantes is 2311, which is a very serious level for the girls section, I believe. And here, what do we have here? We are, I think as white we are better here, because the bishop on a6 doesn't really stand well. I mean, she just moved the bishop to b7, which makes a lot of sense. White moved the rook back to e3, And the question is what to do with the queen on d8 because it stands in front of the rook on d1, and I'm not sure if that's very pleasant for black. I'm sorry. So I assume that she will take on d4. And then at knight takes d4 plays something like queen c7, although this runs into knight b8. So black needs to be accurate. I believe with the accurate play, black should be able to equalize, but white is clearly pushing. So Tale should be satisfied with the opening outcome. All right, in the last match in this section, we've got the player from, let me check, from Slovakia, Zala Ur. And she's playing against Annie Wang, also a US player, who is very, very strong. I believe she came second last year in the US Chess Championship, almost winning it. She was really close. So she must be a clear favorite here with 200 points lead in rating wise. So although the position is still unclear, white wants to do something on e4, somehow attack this knight. But the question is if she can take it immediately, which I don't think is the case, because then she'll probably lose her knight due to the pin. So she can move the knight from e5 because the queen on e4 is hanging, and that means that black is winning the knight here. So, and if white can't take this knight on e4, the knight on e4 stands really well. And I want you to pay attention that, it looks like the knight on e5 is very well placed as well. But the thing is, black can actually push the knight away from e5 by playing f6 and attacking this knight. And since white's pawn is already on f4, there's no such an option for white. And it looks like black has solved all of his problems. And Annie Wang, as I said, very, very strong. So she must be a favorite in this match. All right, so these are girls 18. Let's take a look at the open 16 section, where the clear favorite of this section is Vincent Keimer, who is a German player, who is a student of Peter Lecke as well, and 2591 player. So not much to add to this, to be honest. Clearly he's the strongest one in the section and already won a couple of big tournaments, so has a very bright career already, as well as a very bright career in front of him, I believe. So what to say about the position? White is slightly better. He has a clear plan of playing b4, knight c5, and then a4, and then b5, so-called minority attack. Also, the knight will come to c5, putting some pressure on the b7 pawn, while this bishop on e6 doesn't really stand well. It's really hard for black to exchange it. Ideally, he would love to exchange this light square bishops, and then we would say that the position is almost equal, but that's not the case, so that's why I think white is significantly better here, since black doesn't really have any counterplay. And Vincent's opponent is Jose Cardoso from, let me see, he is from Colombia, I believe. And of course, not going to be an easy match for him. So I call Vincent a clear favorite here. The next match, though, is not so simple, since we have a Iranian player, Amireza Por, against the Georgian player, Nikolozy Kacharava. And again, in this match, we have a pretty close ratings. So Iranian player has a rating of 2432 points, and the Georgian one is on 2443. As of the position, we can say that it's pretty balanced. I guess the knight is coming to c5, but usually here it's not a big problem for black. because at the very least he can always take and then put the pawn on a4 and fix this pawn on b2, which can be a potential weakness. So if I would be forced to choose a side, I would probably pick white here, but it's not really anything for white here. So close match, and the position is balanced as well, so not much going on here. All right, we do have another result and another very strange situation where in this position, which is probably slightly better for white, apparently black lost. I don't really understand what happened. Again, we will need to figure it out, and probably we'll get some explanations from the arbiters. I'm assuming maybe there was a disconnection or some cheating involved even, but okay. As of the position, there's not much to say. Obviously, a playable one, and black shouldn't resign here. And the last match of this section is between, oh man, this is really hard to pronounce. Jerry, not exactly sure, but the guy is actually very well known, a Danish GM from Denmark, so he's well above 2500, 2551, playing against Frederick Svein from Germany, and looks like black has some initiative. On the other hand, if white will manage to solve all the short-term problems, like let's say knight takes d3 is a threat, and then c takes, rook takes e2, the knight in e2 is hanging. If white handles all this short-term issues somehow, then he should be fine. Yeah, and he actually played knight c3, moving away the knight from this hanging square. So black does look active in this position, but I'm not really sure how to continue the attack here. And then white's knight can come to d5, threatening some nasty stuff like knight c7 with fork on two rooks. So, and actually the knight is pinned for now, so I'm not really sure. Maybe queen h5 is the move to move away from the pin, but then by all means, white is doing completely fine here. So the Danish GM should be a favorite here, but as far as it looks now, black is not better, and I would even say that white is better. So it's not going to be easy for the Danish promising talent. All right, goes 14. Next session. Here we have a match between Savita from India, I believe. Let me double check this. Yeah, she is an Indian player indeed, with a very high rating of 2261, facing Rachel Wu, who is actually, I know her a little bit since I spent some time in the US in the past, and a little bit familiar with the promising US kids. So she was one of them. I'm actually really surprised that her rating is that low, like just barely above the 2000 mark. And honestly, I think that's not her real rating. She's actually a much stronger player, and as we can see, she's 5 minutes ahead on the clock, which is a significant advantage. And sometimes it's even more significant than some extra pawn or whatever, some positional advantage, because most of the games will be decided in some time scramble. So the fact that Rachel is 5 minutes ahead is a serious factor, and actually her position is completely fine as well. e4 is weak, queen on e5 stands perfectly. I don't think she has any single problem here as black. So even though she's almost 250 points below her opponent, I don't think it's going to be an easy match for Savita. All right, the next one we have American player, Yan Rui Young, and she's playing against Hungarian player Soska Gal. So looks like white is better here. White is better here because the pawn on b7 is really weak, and it's not going to be easy to protect it. For example, if rook comes to b8, white can actually take this pawn on b7, and then after that take the knight on c6 and be a clear pawn up. So if black goes b6, for example, then I can play knight a6, hitting the knight with the rook, and also hitting the pawn on c7 with deadly fork. He's 2 points behind on the clock as well. So she'll need some miracle here. All right, the next match is Filipino player Clarice April Joy, rated 1400, against Polish player Liza Latifa. Or is it? I'm sorry, I think it's Indonesian actually. Indonesian. All right, so what can we say about the position? Looks like white just lost the pawn, but after knight b4, for example, and knight c3, yeah, I think the knight can just come to c3, and then the next move it will come to d5 because white is forced to move the queen. So knight d5 stands, knight on d5 stands perfectly well. And looks like white is just a clear pawn down with no compensation whatsoever. So I like black here, and she is a huge favorite in terms of ratings as well. So looks like Latifa will be able to qualify for the semifinals. All right, the next one is Majdal van Forest, which I believe, I'm not sure, but I believe that she's another representative of famous Van Forest family, which already has 2 GMs, Lucas and his brother's name. I think black is Valdar Murzi. Actually, 2 pieces up as for now. Playing, it's not gonna 5, e2, rook e4. Yeah, black is winning. Just also b weak, and so I think she will win this convincingly. All right, here we the promotion. So the main favorite of takes h4. Black is just bad enough because e4 is weak and the bishop on h4 is strong, so this is a nice position for black. So that's how she managed to win the game. Alice Lee beat Aris Mo, both representing the US. And Aleksandra Schwedova from Russia beat Anastasia Kirtaza from Georgia. And yeah, let's take a quick look at the open section as well. Jakub Seaman, 2300 guy, which is very impressive for such age, won his game against Yutan Po. Igor Samunenkov beat Edis Gurel. I'm assuming from Turkey. Let's double check that. Yes, he is from Turkey. And then who else is there? Ivan Savelyev lost to Dimitar Mardov, who is representing the US. And I'm familiar with him as well. Very promising kid. And as we can see, under 12 category and already 2265. I remember when I was playing these championships, 2265 would be like a top 3 rankings for sure. So, and still the same case. So the guy to look for is for sure. And a promising, very talented Russian kid, Stavo Vitokin, surprisingly lost to Go Bach from Vietnam. Looks like he just overpushed here because his position is completely fine here. And somehow, yeah. Although I can't really say that he got, he overpushed. Looks like he just got outplayed. And very nice game by Vietnamese player, who is apparently underrated because this is not 2060 player. Very good technique, clear win. So his opponent didn't really get any chance in this game, which is pretty impressive. All right, so the girls section. Let me find it real quick. So we got the favorite Victoria Smitanska from Poland lost to Elnaz Kaliahmed. And as we can see, there is actually 600 points difference. But I guess when it comes to 10 years old kids, it's not a big deal. Anyone can beat anyone, so I wouldn't really pay too much attention to the ratings here. This was a draw for some reason, although I think White can play on. I mean, he's just a pawn up. And she's just a pawn up. Decided which... I mean, of course it's a drawish position, but I mean, if you pawn up, why not to play this on? You don't run any risks, so this must be good for White, sorry. Next one, Amia Vidyarthi beat Hiparaji Shreya. And yeah, White's pawns are just way too strong. Next move is c7 or d8, so Black can't really do anything here. And Saadat Basharli beat Melika Muhammadi. Again, 400 points disadvantage, but we shouldn't really pay too much attention to the ratings here when it comes to kids. Although I would pay some attention to this guy for sure, because his rating is something really outstanding. Playing under 10 sections, so he must be 9 or 10, and 2361 is something just unique. I don't think there are many players who had the same rating at this age. So clearly, very very promising kid, but couldn't really beat his opponent in this game. And there's again 400 points, even more than 450, 100 points difference. Nevertheless, wasn't really able to convert his advantage. Who else is there? The second seed is Rio Chen. Lost his game apparently by blundering something really bad. I don't know. I don't know. I guess he didn't want to take the bishop because of 97, king f8, knight c8, and yeah, this is lost indeed. For some reason, apparently it was an opening disaster, so Black just lost a bunch of material and just resigned. Pretty impressive game by Marine Moy. All right, and the last game of the under 10 section is Aaron Mendes lost to Andy Woodward. And looks like it was a convincing win. So I guess we'll take a really quick break because the games are starting really soon, and we'll come back and we'll try to see. We'll see if someone will be able to come back. I'm sure we will have some upsets, but that's what makes this tournament that interesting. This playoff system, I like it a lot. All right, so quick break, and I'll be back with you in approximately 5 minutes. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. So we continue with the second games of the quarterfinals, and let's move on. Let's jump right into the action. So we got the game Galame against Yusupenko. So Yusupenko he's lost the first game. Second one, he needs to win badly, and it's not going to be easy. His opponent is very strong, as we saw in the first game. And Yusupenko is actually well known as a more positional player who doesn't really play anything crazy, and playing for win as black, I don't think it's in his style. But here he doesn't really have a choice, so we saw the Catalan defense, Catalan opening, I guess, and somewhat weird variation where white jumps to the knight on e5 quickly, black plays c5, and the second knight comes to f3. That's already a fresh position, at least I haven't really seen it at the top level, and I guess that's some good news for Yusupenko, since his opponent's clearly on his own as for now. Already spent 4 minutes. Yusupenko is playing much faster than his opponent, so that's his chance. I guess he needs to keep the position tense and as complicated as possible. Don't really let his opponent exchange the pieces, and then try to win using his time advantage. White just took on e5, e takes d5, so it's sort of a standard position, although as I said, this particular situation is new, and looks like black is doing okay-ish. Like of course I can't say that he's any better here. White is perfectly solid, but that's exactly what Yusupenko wanted. Complicated stuff, tense position, and we'll see if he will manage comeback in this match. All right, the second one, Sargsyan needs the same as Yusupenko, but he's white, so technically it's supposed to be easier for him to win back. But his opponent is pretty strong and played a very nice game in the first round. This line is well known, actually considered to be slightly worse for black. So I'm a little bit surprised that Indian went for this when he needs a draw, because this looks like a slightly worse position for black without really without much counterplay, and mostly his problem is the bishop on c6 and the backward pawn on c7. If black will manage to play c5 at some point, he will be completely fine, but I don't think that's the case, since white has rook c1, then maybe he can transfer the knight to d3 to control the c5 square. So looks like white is slightly better, although in this position Shant played rook e1, which doesn't really look like the best move to me, because the only idea I see is that he wants to play e4, but that opens up the position, and this should be favorable for the two bishops, and that's what actually happened. Castle and then e4. Well, as I said, I'm not really liking it. I think black can just takes back, and then maybe play bishop e7, maybe just take on e4, and then play something like, maybe take on e4 and then play something like c6, and then with the idea of transferring the knight to d5, if the knight actually comes to d5, black is fine, but it will take him 3 moves, so maybe Shant wants to use this time and actually fight for some advantage. But as I said, I'm not really a big fan of this e4 idea, because when you have when your opponent has 2 bishops, you're not supposed to open up the position. But I guess Shant has something concrete in mind, so we'll see who's right here. The curious match is the one between Francesco Sonis and Hector Ramirez. So we've got harmless opening from white. But usually when you're a stronger player, you don't really need to get a huge advantage from the opening. You just need to get a playable position and slowly outplay your opponent. But this guy hasn't really worked for anyone yet, and we'll see if Sonis will manage to outplay his opponent here in this position, which actually looks completely fine for black. Especially after weird move knight d4, I would probably look for something like rook d1 with the idea of playing c4 and attack the weakness on d5. Knight d4 doesn't look right for me, although I mean it's still an equal position, and a better player should be able to outplay his worst opponent. But that's hasn't been the case so far. All right, Nihal and Justin Wang, they drew the first game. Here we have a curious opening where we see this situation, and bishop b5 is sort of unusual. Usually white puts the bishop on b2 automatically, but Nihal has something else in mind, so he plays knight e5, immediately putting some pressure on the knight on d6, d7, and also maybe he wants to put the knight on c6. So that's why Justin's spend some time here and play queen c8 with the idea of playing c6, I believe. And also moving away the queen from d8, where it would be attacked by the knight on c6. Now knight c6 doesn't make any sense because a6 just wins the piece for black. Bishop a4 and b5. So yeah, curious opening development. Looks like black should be fine, and Nihal is spending time trying to find some advantage for white. I don't really believe he will get anywhere, but at the same time, he didn't lose the first game. It was a draw, so I think he's more or less fine with the Armageddon game as well, because he must be the favorite knowing his blitz skills. All right, so the next one is goes under 18. Here, this game hasn't started yet. Weird. Solozhenkin against Priyanka, I think they drew the first game. Here white has a slightly better position thanks to bishop pair, but I guess the knight is coming to d4 the next move. And you know, people who play the King's Indian type of positions, they're usually happy with such setup. And as I said, white is probably slightly better, but not a big deal. Moving on, Talia, I believe, won her first game. Let me double check this. Oh, actually, it was an interesting endgame. No. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. Now, Panisha drew her first game against actually the Grandmaster from Canada. And now we have a very interesting position where the pawn on c2 looks very strong, but at the same time, if white will manage to surround it with her pieces, I think it may become a weakness as well. And if black loses this pawn, then he's just a pawn down. So in this position, it's all about the c2 pawn. If white will manage to win it, he's clearly much better. If not, then c2 pawn is really annoying, and white would be just much worse if he won't be able to do anything with that pawn. But feels like after rook e2, I don't really see a clear defense, although she just played e5, being really aggressive and creating her own passed pawn. Should probably be the d6 pawn. So really sharp, a really interesting position. As the first game finished in a draw, they both should be a little bit careful with their moves because they don't really have a margin of safety here. All right, so Annie Wang won her first game. Don't really expect any troubles for her in the second game. Looks like she's in total control here and should relatively easy qualify for the next round. Open 16th section, Vincent Keimer won his first game. Now he's probably a little bit worse thanks to a bishop pair, but the knight on b4 is really strong. e4 may be hanging at some point. He will just double up on a d file. So even if white has anything here, I don't think it's easy to come up with some strong plan here for white. So Keimer should be able to call this and therefore qualify for the next round. All right, this is the match between Amireza Por and Nicolosi Kacherava. First game finished in a draw. This one is a typical Sicilian struggle where looks like black is actually doing fine. He just played 95 in this position. And if white takes, d takes, the knight on c3 actually stands pretty badly because he doesn't really have anywhere to go to, any outpost in the position. So, and if he doesn't take, then the knight on e5 actually stands really well. So I feel like black is completely fine, but we shouldn't really overestimate black's position. And in fact, he did just take on e5, d takes, and I would take black, but not a big advantage for black for sure. All right, this game finished in a weird fashion where Andrew Huang won on move 5 or 6 or something like that. So his opponent needs to strike back, and actually we got a very interesting position. I believe it was Italian. No, it was actually Spanish, so we can quickly take a look at the opening. Open Spanish. And well-known line, knight takes f2. I believe it's considered to be not so great for black, but white needs to know a lot of stuff in order to prove his advantage. And it feels like the situation is actually that white knows what he's doing and black doesn't really know. So he just, I mean, look at the time. So black is almost 10 minutes behind on the clock, which is a huge deal. And now rook takes f3. That's the position we have right now. And what can we say about black has rook and 2 pawns for 2 pieces, which is normally good for him. And I think that's actually the case here as well, but white definitely has some chances to win the game as well. It's a 3-result game, and you know, when you lose in the match and you need to win the game badly, that's probably the position you want to get. So I'm curious what will happen next. All right, here we have the Danish GM Pierre. Again, so confusing. Not sure how to pronounce it. He lost the first game to Frederick Swain from Germany and needs to win this position as white. And what can we say? I mean, white is definitely better, but this position, this type of structure has been proven very, very solid for black. So generally it's a 2-result game, so black is not really playing for a win in this situation, but right now he doesn't really need to. Draw is fine for him. He will qualify if he makes a draw, so will take some efforts from white to break it through, but he's definitely still in the race. All right, so this was open 16. Let's take a look at girls 16. Bibisara won her first game and about to win her second game, even though she doesn't really need to, I think. Mainly, the main problem for white, we actually saw this situation in one of the previous games where we had the knight on e5 and knight on e4. And again, white is facing the same problem, that the knight on e4 can't really be attacked by a pawn because the pawn is already on f4. And black can play f6 and kick the knight out from e5 at any point. And that's what makes black's position positionally better. And knowing how solid Vivisaris, I think she won't have any trouble with qualifying for the next round. Alright, so Yuxing Song, I believe she won her previous game. Let's see. At least she was winning. Yes, she did win her previous game against Nurmuhamedova Alisa. In this game, she only needs a draw. She is almost 100 points higher rated, so well, position is still playable, of course. I mean, Black can try to push, but being 7 minutes, almost 8 minutes behind on the clock, I don't really expect Nurmuhamedova to do any damage here, and that means that she'll be out of competition after this game. And Cuban player Hernandez facing Indian Ravi Rakshita. What's going on here? I can see that the knight on g7 is just really bad. White just played bishop g5, pointing out that the queen and the rook on the same diagonal. And after f6, which looks like a forced move, white just took. Knight takes f6, queen takes h4. Looks like a completely winning position for white. And Hernandez actually won the first game, so this will be a comeback. I don't really see any other result here. Black is just hopeless in this position. Besides being a pawn down, her knight is also terrible. e6 is really weak, so terrible situation for her. Leah Garifulin, a young Russian star, trying to outplay her opponent Evelyn Zhu, and they drew the first game. So in this game, wow, she's 12 minutes ahead on the clock. I don't really understand how is it possible to play the rapid games so slowly. Maybe there is some issue with the clock right now, but so far it's been accurate. So yeah, and she just played 95. The time hasn't really changed. So apparently that's the right situation. She's 11. I mean, almost hard to say how much time she's behind on the clock. And this situation, I don't really expect her to survive this, especially after playing. So queen g3 happened, knight c6, and now a strong move rook d1. She's transferring her rook to d1 and pointing out at the d6 weakness. Black's position is okay, not so terrible, but the time situation is, you can't survive this. And actually, Garifulina plays this way in the classical chess as well. Like, she's really fast, and I expect her to qualify from this match. All right, so this goes under 16. Open 14 section. We got Pranav trying to get back in the match against Gukesh. Looks like white is pawn down and his king is weak. So the only problem for black as for now is this knight on d4, which is pinned, and maybe white can use it somehow, although I don't really see the way. a3 right now looks a little bit unpleasant. And after bishop c5, just b4. On the other hand, even here I can play bishop e7, since white's queen is not attacking the knight on d4 anymore. I'm not sure if white can actually use this pin. But this is a critical moment of the game. If he won't come up with something really strong in the next 3-4 moves, he'll be just a pawn down. And considering that he needs to win this, it's not gonna be fun for white trying to win this game. Although now I see that he's 6 minutes up on the clock, which is a big deal. And a3 actually looks kind of dangerous for black. So Pranav he's still got a chance. All right, Denis Lazovic beat Mittal in the previous game. A very unfortunate game for Mittal where he was winning. So now he needs to win as white. And he is pushing a little bit. Like knight is coming to f5, the bishop is strong on b2, although the pawn on d5, not really liking this pawn. And actually black just played bishop e5, pointing out that black can just exchange the bishops, and after knight takes e5, d3 square is available for the knight or for the bishop on h7. And looks like black is just completely fine. d5 is hanging. At some point he can try to push c4. So I think Denis will be able to hold this game and qualify for the next round. Christopher Yu won his first game, so now he's defending against Danishvar, needs a draw, but the position is tricky. It's tricky. Black is a pawn up, and this is actually sort of a standard pawn sacrifice where black has a stupid bishop on b7 now, and white has all the attacking ideas like knight f5, for example. Knight may come to d6. White can try to push e6 at some point as well, opening up black's king. Maybe the rook can be lifted to g3, attacking g7. The only concern I have about white's position is that the material is kind of limited, so I'm not sure if white's resources will be significant enough to create a mating attack. And if not, then then he's just a pawn down. And black just played bishop c8, covering the f5 square. I think it's a strong move. And yeah, white needs to prove his compensation, and he also needs to win the game, so not gonna be easy. Valdar Murzin won his first game against Arthur Go. Now he's actually kind of struggling here as white, although he's 5 minutes up on the clock. The d3 pawn is the key source of counterplay for black, but as for now, it's well blocked. Although the queen g5 idea is kind of dangerous, I believe, because g2 will be hanging, and we really don't want to play g3, creating some targets for the bishop on b7. So still not easy for white, but I believe that his defensive resources should be enough to hold this game and qualify for the semifinals. All right, who else do we got here? This open 14, open girls 14. Somehow I don't see it here. All right, it's right here. So Russia won her first game against the rating favorite Savita. Now Savita needs to win as black, and look at the time situation. She has literally no time, less than a minute on the clock. Rochelle is on 9 minutes. Her position looks perfectly fine. Knight on a5 is really stupid. Of course, there's some tricks, but actually, as for now, right now in this position, knight to d5 looks really interesting because black can take. The rook is hanging on c8. This is just dead loss for black. So the queen has to go somewhere else, to d8, let's say. And now, even some ideas like knight f6, to be honest, look interesting. But instead, okay, so this didn't happen. She just took the pawn on c6. Also makes sense, looks like a free pawn. So, considering the time situation, I think that white is just winning here. And that means that we'll have a serious upset in this category where Rochelle Wu will beat the rating favorite, Savita from India. Alright, I don't like white's position, I can tell you from the first glance. Although she just played, she just took on f4 and played rook e2. So, 7 pawns for black and 6 pawns for white, just a pawn down, queen d4 for example. Yeah, that's what happened in the game, and looks like black's in the driver's seat, and let's see how the first game actually finished in this encounter. So this goes under 14, And as I can see, the first game here finished in a draw, so girl from Hungary has a good chance to upset her opponent and qualify for the next round. Because if she wins the match. And here Black needs to win. And he's got all the chances. She's got all the chances, I think, because the pawn on d4 is somewhat weak potential. The bishop on b2 is really stupid. All of these dark squares are in Black's control, specifically f4. Maybe at some point the bishop can come to e3. The knight on g3 is under attack. And what's funny that White has offered a draw at some point, knowing that the draw will be enough for her to qualify. Somehow, surprisingly, Black declined it. So, and now she has a lot of chances. The girl from Philippines, April Joy. So, yeah, and if she wins, it's a tie, and we will see Armageddon in this match. All right, let's come back and see if Yusupenko can come back in his match. A lot of development here. So we stopped around here. So far everything looks normal, although White spent some time playing Queen A4, Queen D1. I should probably say wasted some time. But this position is perfectly fine for him. I really don't like the move Knight F4. I really don't like it. I can say it, immediately. Look at this move. I think White should just play E3 and maybe Queen C2, Rook D1. Play it normally. Knight F4 led to, first of all, unbalanced position, which is not good for a match situation. Secondly, doubling up the pawns is generally not a good idea in such positions, I think. So this is sort of a positional mistake by White. Bishop C8 was played. The bishop had nothing to do on B7. Now the rook comes to H6, I believe. So somewhere, at some point, he may be able to attack. For example, rook H6, then F6, and the queen comes to H5. F3, knight C5, and White just bravely took the pawn on C5, although looks really scary. F6, and rook takes D5. Interesting. I think he could just move away the knight. Instead, he took on D5, rook E6, bishop B7. So as you can see, White's kingside, even though he won a couple of pawns, his kingside kind of got destroyed. The bishop on G2 is really bad. E2 is hanging. The bishop may come to C5. So just played E4, sacrifice in exchange. And what happened here is that after bishop takes, queen takes, king H8. So the rook actually is untouchable because of bishop c5 check, and the queen will be hanging on e6. So White had to play king h1, rook c6, knight e3, and we have this position which is not going to be easy to win for Black, of course, but Galami is below a minute on the clock. Queen c8 has been played, and f4 is weak. The queen side, I don't think White will be able to protect it. So even though his position is, I think, survivable, but not with such time situation. I mean, half a minute against 5, such a strong opponent. I think Yusupenko is going to make a huge comeback in this match. All right, so is Sarkisian coming back? And the answer is probably no. He's not. It's just pawn down. Best case scenario, he will get the pawn back and make a draw, but that's not what he needs. He needs to win, and I don't really see any chances for White to win this game. So Sarkisian is out. All right, here, that's our mysterious match. Sonis is pushing as White. E4 is weak. The pawn will come to h6, creating all sort of mating threats. So, although black just played h5, and I think that's the right idea, but still e4 is weak and somewhat weaker king for black. So I think white has chances. On the other hand, Kepler hasn't lost the game yet. That's the first thing. And the second thing, he's up 3 minutes on the clock. So that's a tricky situation. Not sure if Sonis will manage to come back here, but we'll see. Alright, so Justin Wang looks like he won a pawn against Nikhal. And the situation is really, really tricky since both players have a minute left on the clock. And I think white should be able to get the pawn back, and then black will be left with the stupid bishop on b7. So this is the key moment of the game, maybe of the entire match. Because the question is if black will be able to maintain his extra material. I think the answer is probably not. So we'll see how Justin will handle the situation. But as I said, he's a very strong player, so no surprise at all that Nikhal is struggling here to qualify for the next round. All right, as for girls, this game hasn't even been played for some reason. So Carissa Yip qualifies for the next round. Really weird. Some of these games are really weird. All right, so Salazhenkina against Priyanka. E takes, bishop takes f6, b3 has been played. Again, it's all about the pawn on d4. And it's a very frequent situation in chess where, you have a pawn and it's not easy to understand if it's a weakness or a strength. And if it's a strength, black is better. If it's a weakness, black is worse. And I don't really see it as a strength, to be honest. Although white's pieces is also kind of tied up to, look after this pawn on d4. But the good thing for white is that she always has some f5 ideas, opening up black's king. And maybe that can decide the game potentially. Although black looks fine, to be honest. I don't think he's in any trouble here. Alright, so Talia Cervantes actually proved that c2 pawn was strong enough, and this is obviously a completely winning pawn endgame. She will win this game and will qualify for the semifinals. Congrats to her. Annie Wang is exchange up, and she only needs a draw here. I'm not sure if she will win or she will draw the game, but she's definitely not going to lose this. So, congrats to her as well. Vincent is struggling here, and looks like he's actually just completely lost because the king is coming to b6, then to b5, then to b6, then to c7, and d6 pawn just promotes. He's got no time left. So Cardoso equalizes the score in this match, and we will see an Armageddon. Who would have thought about that? Yeah, and Kacharava messed up his position badly, bunch of pawns down, completely lost against poor Amireza, and yeah, black will win this game and the match as well. Andrew won his game, even though his position looked pretty dangerous at some point and the time situation wasn't easy. Nevertheless, he managed to prove that rook and pawns are stronger than two pieces in some types of games. And our Danish friend is struggling to win this position. Very curious one, but he's got only one pawn left. Black has 5 pawns versus 5, so 3 pawns for a piece. Opposite colored bishops. Actually, I said 1 pawn, but he played h4, keeping the second pawn as well. But now this pawn on h4 may become a serious weakness. Black just played f4, king f1. with white's pieces being so passive, I don't really believe that he has a real chance here to win this game. That means that he will be out of competition, and another surprise, another surprise. All right, so this is open 16, girls 16. Asubayeva drew her game. She won the first one, so that's fine. Here, Song needs a draw. She will get there. Hernandez lost her second game. Right, she won the first one, lost the second one. So it's a tie in the match. We'll see the Armageddon here. And here, Lea Garifulina. We said that she was like 12 minutes ahead on the clock or something like that. Now she's only 4 minutes, and the position is actually equal. So I'm not sure at all if she will manage to convert her mainly time advantage. She doesn't really have any advantage in terms of the position, but still 4 minutes is a big deal. But so far, Evelyn Zhu, she's been very, very solid in this match. Okay, so guys 14. Guys under 14. Pranav won his game. Yeah, as we were saying, that was a dangerous situation for Gukesh, and yeah, he actually, I don't know if he blundered his queen. I guess he just lost his queen. His position was terrible anyways. So that's a tie as well. Interesting. Lazarik won his second game, so it's a 2-0 match in his favor. Christopher Yu needs to survive, and he's actually getting attacked very seriously here. Although I think Bishop, no, hold on a second. The rook is hanging, and the mate is hanging in the air. That's game over, guys. That's game over. He actually played g6, gave up the rook, but so many comebacks this round. This is actually very interesting. And this game is tricky as well. Murzin won his game as black in the first round very convincingly, so I didn't really think his opponent has a chance in this match, but looks like, I mean, black is clearly pushing. The question is if he will be able to convert his extra pawn. He's got all the chances here, although it's not going to be easy, mainly because of the opposite color bishops, and the knight blocks the pawn on d3 very, very well. And we'll see if Arthur will manage to convert this, but he's still in the race. All right, this open 14, under 16, girls 14. All right, Rachel drew her game. That's all she needed. Qualifies for the next round. Very good. This game is a second draw. Black can't really avoid perpetual, even though she's got two extra pawns, but that's just a draw. So I think this is a second draw in the match, and that's a 1-1. April Joy. I don't think she will be able to win this as black. That means she's unfortunately out of the tournament, and congrats to Leiza Latifa. And Van Forest. Van Forest lost her first game. Now she's trying to come back, but the best she's got in this position is probably perpetual. And black should be able to make a draw here without any problems. White just took the pawn on a7, but the simplest is probably just to play d4 and push the d pawn as far as she can, and yeah, that's just a dead draw, so not much to talk about. Okay, so let's see if Yusupenko managed to win. No. He hasn't managed to win. Moreover, I don't think he will win this position because This is just absolute fortress. Like, how can you win this? All right, so let's see what happened. They actually got the endgame after queen d7, which was a strong move. Black wins 1 pawn on the queen side, and he still exchanged up, so all the chances in the position. Although, of course, again, we have the position with the opposite color bishops where it's not easy to convert at all. He trades off a pair of rooks, which I'm not sure it was a great idea, since he needs to win, and I would leave more material on the board, but he's actually very strong, so he knows what he's doing. Although here he just lost the h-pawn for nothing. Absolutely nothing, and no way white will lose this. No way. There's no way. So surprisingly, the almost 2700 guy, most likely he's not in the competition anymore. I mean, I just don't see white losing this. This is just way too solid. Sarksan, meanwhile, managed to win that position somehow, which I called a dead draw, even a better position for black. So let's see, he found some interesting resource, rook c3, takes, rook b8, still looks like a pawn up position for black. How do you lose this? I mean, now I can imagine, although still the knight is on a4, so edge of the board, b6, king c6, lost the pawn, so clearly he lost the track here in this position, just lost the pawn for nothing, and b6 pawn survived. Even this position, I believe, is still unclear in terms of, white's winning chances, but somehow, or b7 was a nice trick. Bishop c5 looks so bad. I don't really know what happened to Inyan. He actually played a very nice match, but the ending of this game was just really bad. All right, I'm taking my words back. Actually, he won the pawn. Apparently, that was his trick. That after b7, bishop comes to a7, and white is not able to protect the pawn anymore. So he just played f4, and this is, of course, it's such a dead draw. How do you lose this? Oh my god. So the guy just blundered mate in one, ladies and gentlemen. Just mate in one. If you go to e6, if you go to e4, there's just no way black losing this. He's not worse by any means. Yeah, that's a cruel game, but mate in one was blundered. Obviously, Cutler Ramirez won his game. Well, I would recommend the authorities to look at this game very closely, because this is not how 2100 plays, guys. I can tell you this for sure. Especially 2 matches in a row. I mean, 1 match, okay, anything can happen, but the second match, no. Second match in a row, beating the opponent, which is like 400 points higher than you, in under 18 section. It's not under 10 section, right? So if it's a clean game, it's something truly amazing. All right, so Nikal is trying to beat Wang in this position. He does have some chances. His king is potentially more dangerous, since, I'm not sure what this arrow is about, but all right, we have this position as for now. Yeah, but black's rook is just way too active, attacking e3, so that means that white's king can't really move anywhere. At the same time, it protects the pawn on c6, the king on f6 protects the weakness on g6, so should be a draw. It should be a draw, and that means that we will get another Armageddon. Alright, so here Solozhenkin actually checkmated her opponent. And let's see what happened. As I said, at some point f5 was the real threat for black. And yeah, her king was actually too weak to survive this. And the knight on g7. I mean, the knight was standing really well on e6. Now it's on g7. It doesn't have any single move, so white regroup his pieces. And actually now after queen e4, the pawn on h7 just falls. There's no way to protect it. And yeah, black is just dead lost. Wasn't the cleanest conversion, I guess, but good enough. Salazhenkina makes it to the semifinals. Talia makes it as well. Annie won her second game. So what do we have here? We don't really have any Armageddons in this section. So Carissa Yip makes it. Salazhenkina makes it as well. Cervantes and Annie Wang. I think these are actually the top 4 seed in the tournament, so no surprise here at all. All right, back to Mikhail's game. Still trying to do something, but it's really hard to trick black here. All right, an open 16 section, open 18. Okay, Yusupenko draw, by the way. He drew his game. And Galami qualifies for the next round. Yeah, we just saw this made in one, and this is a tie. This is a really weird match where Kepler makes it to the semifinals. Nihal is still trying, but I don't really believe in his chances. So let's take a look at Open 16. Yeah, Kamer lost his game. So this is another Armageddon. This is a loss as well for white. So Amirrezapur makes it to the semifinals, as well as Andrew Hong, who won his game. And then, yeah, the Danish gentleman, Danish junior, unfortunately couldn't really make it work in his game. So the maximum he could get here is a draw. Black just wants to promote the pawn, and so many pawns left. There's no chance white can win, so white was forced to repeat the position, which means a draw, which means that Frederick Swain qualifies to the semifinals. Congratulations to him. All right, so I think we got almost all the games over. Let's see, Girls 16. Bibisara qualifies, Song qualifies. This is the tie breaks, I mean the Armageddon. And here Garifulina drew her game as well. Not officially yet, but knight takes f3 is good enough. So this will be Armageddon 2. 2 games in Girls 16 section. Guys 14, Gukish, Armageddon. Lazovic made it. Danishwar strikes back, and it's Armageddon as well. And somehow it says that black lost it in probably winning position, guys. I don't know, maybe he lost on time. I guess that's what happened. So Murzin makes it to the semifinals as well. And well deserved, I guess, although this is something really weird. Who else is there? Girls 14. Rachel Wu upset Savita, we saw that. This is gonna be Armageddon. Here Liza Latifa qualifies. And here Eileen Roberts qualifies as well, as she won the first game of the match. And then we have another serious upset of the tournament, under 12 category. Huge rating favorite, Jakob Seaman, drew his first game, lost his second game, and he's out. Interesting. Apparently something went wrong with the opening. Wow, what a crazy position. What a crazy mess. I guess it was some kind of theory, although the movie 5 is something which I've never seen before, and I don't really think it's actually strong. Like, this position looks perfectly fine for black, even though he's exchanged down, but he has a strong center, this pawn's are weak, so I guess black should be fine, but somehow these pawns actually, instead of being weak, became really strong, and slowly but surely picked up the f pawn and won the game. Well, once again, it just means that the ratings are not so important at this age, and anything can happen. All right, so here we got Eldis Gurel drew his game against Igor Samunenkov, which means that, let me see, Igor Samunenkov qualifies for the next round since he won the first game from Ukraine, I believe. Yes, he's Ukrainian. This is actually kind of interesting since Mardov, I remember he won the first game, now only needs a draw. And even though white is a pawn, 2 pawns up, this is a famous Philidor position, and there's just no. I was gonna say there's no chance for white to break it through, and I think I'm right. Yeah, that should be a draw. That should be a draw, meaning that Mardov will make it to the semifinals. And Sava Vitohin lost his second game in a row to his Vietnamese opponent. I believe he's Vietnamese. No, he's actually representing the US. I'm sorry. And amazing, because 23-17 clear, one of the 2 clear favorites, and both of them are going down. So this is probably the most surprising section so far. All right, girls 12. The rating leader Valeria won her second game, I believe, as well as the first one. Let's see. No, they drew the first one, but she won the second one, so she makes it to the semifinal. Congrats. Zoe Tang won both of the games of the match. Congratulations as well. Iris Small lost to Alice Lee, both representing the US, and Alice Lee makes it as well, winning both of the games. And I believe here Anastasia Kirtaza actually equalizes the score, winning the second game, and we will see the Armageddon in this match. The only one in this girls under 12 section, and 2 sections left. All right, so the unique guy, I would call him the unique guy, because 23-61 at this age is something extremely impressive. So he wins the second game. I believe he lost the first one, so makes it to the Armageddon. Rio Chen lost to Marine Moy the second game, so Marine Moy makes it to the semifinal. Congratulations to him. And Andy Woodward wins his second game as well. It's 2-0. And here Miao Liu lost to Sina Mowahed, meaning that Sina wins 2 games of the match and qualifies for the next stage. So only one left is girls under 10, where the favorite Victoria Smitanska lost her second game. Emily Alfano, I think she won the first one. Let's double check that. No, they drew the first game, so meaning that Diana actually winning the second game, she wins the match as well. So it's really good for her. Congratulations. Hiparagi Shreya wins the second game, equalizing the score. So now it's a tie, and there's going to be Armageddon. And Basharli against Mohammedi is a draw as well, second draw of the match. So we will see two Armageddons in this section. So I think we covered all the sections. So let's take a very quick break, because Armageddons, we don't really want to miss the beginning. And then we'll probably focus on the top groups, the older ones. And if we have time, we'll take a look at the younger players as well. All right, 3 minutes break. Thank you. we're back, and the Armageddon games are about to start any minute. So we're missing only two sections where the decisive games won't be played. These two sections are girls under 18 and the open section under 10. It's all been decided there. The crazy thing that I kind of missed somehow, that Nikhal actually managed to win that absolutely drawish endgame. Somehow he tricked his opponent, so he doesn't have to play the Armageddon and already qualified for the semifinals. So I guess we're gonna focus our attention on the open under 18 section where the two GMs will play each other. Sean Sarkisian against Indian player Inyan. And the previous game was just insane that Indian just needed a draw and actually blundered mate in one in an absolutely safe position. So let's see how he handles this loss, because this has been tough for him. Also, interesting match is Vincent Kamer, who lost his previous game. Now he's black. He only needs a draw. And in the previous game, it was basically the same situation, and he didn't even give any timeouts, but still lost the game. So this Jose Cardoso is clearly not an easy guy to play against. Also, we have a couple of interesting matches in the Open 14 section. It's Pranav against Gukesh. Pranav won the previous game very convincingly, lost the first one, but won the second one. And now he's white again, needs to win. Christopher Yu couldn't save himself in the second game, so now he needs to win as white. He will get some timeouts, but still would be much more convenient for him not to play this crazy game. And the games are about to start any minute. And actually, we can start looking at some of the games. For example, the girls under 10 section, they just started, and white is Omiya Vidyarthi against Hiparagi Shreya. So what's going on here? Black needs a draw. Looks like black is absolutely fine. She's just a pawn up, and so there's been some development. Actually, no, I'm sorry, she's not a pawn up. I thought that for a second, but actually the material is even, and she even has some advantages white, I think, although the A file is completely under black's control, and the only serious thing is here is the pawn on b7. That's something that black needs to be aware of, that this is a serious weakness. Although, as I see now, after knight e5, rook a8, white just played not bishop f3, but f3 and trapped the knight in the middle of the board. That's not something you see every day. Black just played rook a2, f takes, rook takes, e2, e takes. And now the question is how to react to rook a2. And she just played rook b1, saying, all right, you got a couple of checks here, but and that's it. But I'm not really liking it, to be honest. I'm not really liking it for white. I think there was a simpler way. Black took on g2, king h1, knight h5, and just rook takes b7, actually threatening mate in 1. So black needs to deal with that as well. And the question is, does she have any real threats here? The question is probably not. I mean, maybe she's just a pawn down. And what's funny that maybe it's black who's actually getting mated here, because after knight takes f7, now the rook is coming to h8. And that's a mate in 1 threat. If black goes g6, I believe maybe I can even play f6, covering the g7 square, but she just took on g6. But this is very nasty as well because of king g6, then rook g8. Sorry, rook to g8, Winston, rook on g2. So yeah, white is just a piece up without any compensation. Looks like Omia will actually win this game. So let's see if the big boys started the games. All right, so I can see that Winston needed a draw. So what's happening here? White has 5 minutes, black has 4 minutes. Black needs a draw. That's basically it. And Kemir being a very solid player, I thought he would make a draw without much trouble in the second game of the match. He failed, and now he needs to do it again. So black just played knight b4, hitting the bishop on d3. White just moved it away, basically saying you can get this pawn on a2, but after knight a2, I believe queen d2 is a problem, so the knight doesn't really have any square to go to. So I don't think he will take the pawn on a2. Instead he's still thinking. I don't think he can afford thinking for so long. Alright, he just played b6, castle, and now bishop b7. Makes a lot of sense, although I'm still not sure what's the knight doing on b4, but at least black is attacking e4 pawn. And let's move on to the Shant against Indian game where we have two GMs battling each other, so I think that's a critical game to look after. So c5, a very well-known theory. White is slightly better, but not much. And d6 has been played. White still keeps his 1 minute advantage, which is very, very important because I expect some dirty play, to be honest, in maybe not in this game, but in one of the games, because there's a lot at stake, and something like rook versus rook is very, very likely, in my opinion. Although, of course, I don't really approve it. All right, so white doubles on the d file, attacking the pawn on d6. Black probably doesn't really want to play e5 because that weakens the d5 square, so he just goes knight to e8. Makes sense, protects the g6 pawn. And everything looks nice for white, but the problem in such position is that it's not easy to actually improve it. He just took on b6, played b3, black played h6, so nothing forcing here. There's another potential weakness on b6, and white goes g4, which is actually an interesting move, not so common in such positions. Maybe he wants to advance the pawns on king side, so potentially create some attack, something like that. Also keeping the bishop out of trouble in case black goes g5 at some point, which I don't think he wants to, but let's see. Actually, now one of the ideas for black is to play e5 and then maybe try to bring the knight to d4. But that is strategically very risky, so he just goes knight b4 instead. Makes sense. I'm on the a2 pawn, so white just goes a4. And now the knight on b4 is stable, and it's a nice outpost for the knight. Maybe black can try to push d5 at some point. So it's still... Although now it's almost 2 minutes advantage for white. And as I said, black needs to move faster. Which he actually did. So he did play d5, getting rid of the d6 weakness and pushing the pawn in the center. Makes sense. Knight e1, a little bit passive. But now the bishop on g2, pinning the bishop, the pawn on d5, because the bishop on b7 would be hanging. So knight f6 happened, and white just played h3, protecting the pawn on g4. So far, everything is pretty reasonable. I think black is completely fine, but I don't like his time situation at all. But actually, bishop c7 might be a threat. All right, we got a bunch of moves. Black did play rook d7 to cover the c7 square. Knight b5, still a threat. d4, takes, e3. And now it looks like white is actually better, unless something like knight e4 works. Because, okay, he actually did play knight e4, rook e2, and now knight c3, white will just capture the knight back, so it's not a big threat. And e takes, on the other hand, is a big threat because the knight on e4 will be hanging. So tricky situation for black, and with no time, it's not easy to handle. He plays d3. Wow, this is an interesting idea. All right, what happens if white just takes? I think white can just take, and if rook d8, play just knight b2 and protect the rook on d1. Looks like a healthy extra pawn for white, to be honest. And he does take the pawn. So let's see what was black's plan. I don't really see the plan. I mean, okay, so we do have a bunch of moves. That's exactly what happened. Rook d7. All right, so he actually activated his rook this way. This is actually very interesting. Rook d3, and now the b3 pawn falls. So I still think that black is doing all right, but all right. So this develops really quick, and we don't really have time to cover all the moves. So let's just follow the game, and that's what happened. Actually, Sarkisian catching up on time. He's probably aware that he's not really better. So I would think that he needs to play faster, but he slowed down for some reason. And now f2 is weak, so rook a2 may come at some point, and this is a big deal. White played rook c7, attacking the knight, knight e5, rook takes c5. I guess knight d3 is coming now. Or no, he just took the pawn on c4. Yeah, that's much simpler. Rook c8, king h7. And that's, of course, is a dead draw, but as I said, we will see some dirty play here. From white, he's not going to agree on a draw. That's for sure. Although, I mean, the position is still alive, so to say, that you know, white has something to attack, so does black, so something may happen. For example, knight d6, knight d8 is an interesting idea here. And we're waiting for the moves. Only 44 seconds left for Inyan, so it's a tricky situation for him. All right, so knight d6 happened, knight b3, hitting the bishop. Bishop goes back, rook a2, attacking the pawn on f2. Instead of protecting it, white goes after the g7 pawn. So it actually gets very sharp. Rook f3, rook g7, rook f7, now f6 is weak. If e5, just bishop takes e5 because the rook is hanging. So he played knight c5, now bishop f6. What is going on? King g8, rook g7, king f8. Wow. Wow. No, but this doesn't look great for black, at least in practical terms. White has achieved a lot, so bishop takes h4, king e8, king g2, rook e3, bishop f2, rook c3, and the rook went after the h pawn, but knight e4. So black is still holding on, but 22 seconds left. No, I don't think he will survive it. I don't think so. Not to mention that white is actually close to winning now. He's just a pawn up. So e5, knight c5. Unfortunately, I get like a portion of moves all the time, so it's not like one by one. I get like 5 moves at once. Taking on c5, saying the rook endgame is winning, and it is probably winning, especially considering, you know, the time situation. And king g2, king came to h6, and apparently black just flagged at some point. Or, I mean, his position is lost anyways, the pawn just coming to g7. Yeah, so the end of the game was like this. Rook d6, I guess unexpected check. At this time situation, he just flagged. I mean, his position is lost anyways because the rook can come to g6 or even to d8, and then e8 stop the e pawn. G7 will be promoted. So I would say clean win for Shant, and he won the second game. Got very lucky. So unfortunate events for the Indian player, but it is what it is. So Shant is the fourth player who makes it to the semifinal in the under 18 section. And Gamer lost his game to Cardosa. Let's see what happened here. This is probably the biggest upset because Gamer looked like a huge favorite. All right, so the opening, I mean, I didn't like knight b4, so the knight had to go back, and that was clear that knight on b4 is not the right, the b4 square is not the right square for the knight. So knight c6, interesting tactics, using the fact that the bishop is hanging on d6. So now, I guess if rook takes c6, protecting the bishop, then just bishop f3, maybe. Although white needs to consider something like knight c4, but even here white can just play queen d3, I guess. On the other hand, now I can move the rook. So maybe that was a chance for black just to take with the rook, I guess. Or maybe he didn't like bishop b5, so attacking the rook, but also covering the c4 square. So if the knight jumps, we just take the knight. So and black loses some material. He just played bishop c7, but that c6 pawn was really, really strong. Bishop d7. Although here, I mean, I think if you just take, I mean, with the opposite color bishops, this is very close to a draw, I believe, even though the pink pawn on c6 is really strong. Black should be able to survive this, but it would be unpleasant anyways, I guess. So knight e5 makes sense. He tries to win the d7 pawn, but he wasn't really able to. And now f5 was the last move of the game. Now the king can't defend the rook anymore, so he has to take the pawn, and after, let's say, rook d7, black is just a rook down, so he resigned. And I must say, very, very clean game by Cardoso, and outplaying such a serious opponent is a serious achievement. So, moreover, he lost the first game, he won the second one, and then won the Armageddon as well. Poor choice by Vincent in terms of the openings. I think he could have played something else. This turned out to be really passive and well-deserved game. Well-deserved well-deserved win by the. Let me see, where is he from? I forgot. He is from Colombia. Not really chess nation, but clearly a very talented guy. So nice win, nice win. Or Christopher, you put his son together and won the game. The game against his Indian opponent. I'm sorry, he was Iranian opponent. Bishop to c4. There was some weird Caro-Kann, queen f3, but I guess for the Armageddon game, it's fine. Not the most principled line, of course, but still some tricky stuff. Knight e5. This was unnecessary tricky, I think. Maybe it works for black, but I don't really think so. And I think d4 is already inaccurate, allowing bishop c4 with tempo, hitting the f7 pawn. So well, the position looks solid for black. So maybe he just got outplayed afterwards. Yeah, this endgame looks perfectly fine. And the first instinct is to bring the knight to f5, e7 and then f5, and I think that's what he did, right? And the endgame is just okay. Here's the serious mistake. By bishop takes b3, he's really improving white's pawn structure. Now it doesn't look as bad anymore. I would just play something like rook e8. I'm not really afraid of white taking the bishop on e6. Here white is clearly better after this exchange. Now he starts advancing the pawns. And as you can see, this seemingly weak pawns suddenly become really strong, and that decides the game in white's favor. Although somehow he lost the pawn on d7. The conversion wasn't really good, wasn't really clean, and looks like black should be able to hold this, but somehow he lost a bunch of pawns, and then knight g6 was the decisive mistake, missing rook f6 and losing the knight. So Christopher Yu, very promising American player, makes it to the semifinals. Well played. Gukesh, on the other hand, won the first game, lost the second one, and repeated the line from the second game, I believe. Castle long, interesting. Not something you see very often in such color lines. But looks like he got a perfectly safe position because the king on b8 can't really be attacked. The bishop on f5 stands well. And the bishop on c1 is not a great piece. So yeah, bishop came to e4. Now the rook is coming to c2. And in this opposite colored bishop's position, I mean, first of all, black needs a draw. He's fine with a draw, so that's why queen c2 was played. Queens exchange, and this endgame is basically equal, but I guess white just overpushed at some point, because he really needed to win. And notice this move d4, because if not d4, then the king can come to d4 himself, and then white just start pushing the pawns on the queen side, and this may become really unpleasant. So d4 is a very important move, using the fact that if white takes the pawn, then rook c2, activating the rook, and if king a3, for example, then rook h2 going after the h3 pawn. So white didn't take, play rook d1, but now black has a pawn on d3, and this is good enough to have enough counterplay, at least for a draw. Moreover, white really messed it up, and the d pawn actually almost queened. Instead, the h pawn queened, and yeah, he tried, but wasn't successful. So Gukesh, the favorite of this section, is in the semifinals. Next guy is Jakub Simon, who is a clear favorite of the under 12 section, and looks like he won a very nice game. Let's see. The sharp knight, bishop d3, h4. Wow. Maybe that's a theory, but not a move. I'm not really familiar with this move, so I guess the idea is if black takes the bishop, he's forced to take the rook, then the knight is hanging. If he goes knight g8, then rook h8, and something like g6. So white has certain compensation here. I'm not sure if it's like enough for the lost piece, for the sacrifice piece, but for Armageddon game, it's a perfect position for white, I think. All right, so black instead played queen b6, which I don't like. Looks like a loss of a tempo. Oh, yeah, that's exactly what it was. He just went back. So clearly black lost the track here. And then g5, g6. Yeah, that is the standard idea, weakening the e6 square mainly, and also, of course, attacking f7. Black played f6. I think he should have taken the pawn, but probably doesn't make a big difference. And yeah, as I said, e6 is a key weakness here. So after f5, e5, white's knight is dominating, and if black takes it, then just f takes, then the knight comes to f5. Probably black could have resisted in a more convenient fashion, but this is a terrible position. And notice this knight takes g7 move. Very nice combination. Second knight comes to h5, and then queen e3. Hitting the knight on f6, and hitting what's even more important, the pawn on h6. Yeah, and g7, actually a brilliant game by white. Very nice combination. Queen h6, so he just ignored this knight on b6, and I guess he was right. Went after black's king and just checkmated the guy. So the most convincing win we've seen so far. All right, in the open 10th section, there was no Armageddon. Lea Garifulina was a favorite against Evelyn Zhu, and looks like she won her game convincingly, even though the draw was enough. Clearly, white didn't play the most principled line in this opening, and considering that she needed to win, I guess white was a little bit disappointed with the outcomes here. So, and bishop d3 is just a very bad positional move. At least, white's advantage is that she has the bishop pair, which may work at some point. After we trade off the bishops, white just has a couple of weaknesses. Black doesn't have any, and the knight actually works perfectly well against those weak pawns. So rook d8 wasn't necessary, but I guess in blitz, we have to reconsider the strength of the pieces, and the queen is usually not worse than two rooks in blitz games, because it's a very tricky piece, and yeah. Even though the white's position was probably okayish, the queen and the knight, it's a very powerful duo, so white just got mated at some point. Well, very nice game by Grifulina, so she was a favorite, as I said, and she moves on. Another favorite, Hernandez from Cuba, she actually lost her game against Ravi Rakshida. Let's see what happened here. Evans Gambit, not something you see very often, but I guess again for the blitz game it's not bad, although here of course white has to move the bishop back to d3 because this exchange just leads to a pawn down position with no compensation whatsoever. So playing if you play the Evans Gambit, at least you should know something. And clearly Hernandez wasn't really prepared here, although she managed to get some compensation for a very short time here. Black successfully castled, 2 pawns up, the bishop pair, draw is fine, so alright. Hernandez, yeah, that was just an opening disaster. Lost a bunch of other pieces, and yeah, got mated as well. So unfortunate game for Hernandez, but Rakshita was stronger. All right, the next one is from the girls under 14 section, where Zoska Gal faced young Ruyang, and Zoska was stronger here. The girl from Hungary played a double Fianchetto line. Didn't really get anything out of the opening, especially this maneuver looks very suspicious to me. I mean, you do this, then the C file is open, so at least you can, do something with your rook. But here, the rook on c1 stands kind of stupid. The queen on b1 is stupid as well, so black is perfectly fine here. And she decided to exchange some material, which probably wasn't a bad idea. Black is still fine, I believe, although the knight on e4 now is a little bit annoying for black. And f5 probably is a good move, but again, in blitz, you kind of want to be a little bit more solid. So this is a weakening idea, which I believe cost the game for black. Bishop f6, rook f1. Notice this move, very good fighting spirit. So g5. Well, fighting spirit is a good thing, but losing the piece is not so good. So black is just a piece up now. And let's see how she actually messed it up, because this looks winning for black, sorry, just a piece up. Yeah, and here knight f8 makes the most sense to me. So we cover the f7, knight is well protected, everything is well protected. White doesn't really have any active ideas. Instead she played queen d6, which is probably fine as well. Maybe minor inaccuracy, b4, rook e7, takes, and now at least rook comes to b1. And after rook e8, b7. So around here she lost the control and made a bunch of useless moves. White managed to break it through. So queen d5 and knight f7, winning the queen. Unfortunate game for I believe, Chinese player. Let's double check that. No, she represents the US, so the American player was winning, was doing well, but lost her cool in the time trouble, and yeah, chess is cruel sometimes. All right, goes on to 12th. Here the favorite Aleksandr Schweder from Russia beat Anastasia Kirtaza from Georgia. Let's see the French defense. Not the most solid opening when you want to make a draw. White's bishops looks very nice now. H3, not really liking this idea. I think H4 is just much more powerful, much more straightforward and active. I guess she wanted to play G4, so it kind of makes sense. Knight D5, bishop D2, knight F4, but since we managed to win the bishop, I mean exchange the knight for the bishop, black should be completely fine here, although I absolutely don't get the idea of playing queen f6. The queen on f4 stands well. Bishop f6 makes much more sense to me. Actually, with the idea of playing queen b4 at some point and attacking the pawn on b2, so queen f6 is weird, and h6 is just terrible. Never play h6 when you get an attack, because that creates a hook for white. So now after h4, g5, he gets to open h or the h file or the g file. So queen f4, g5, bishop e4. Yeah, now the g file is open, knight comes to g5, so all of black's problems connected with that bad move h6. And f5, same problem, I guess, weakening the king even more. Now e6 is weak. It's still a game, of course, but black is much worse here. So let's see if there was anything interesting here. All right, so it looks like she was holding on, but then just blundered the pawn on e6. But black's position is very hard to play anyway, so that was just meant to be that she was going to blunder something at some point. Rook e7 and then a3. Actually, I really like this a3 move, so now white's king doesn't have any backracking issues. And in the end game, yeah, white picked up the second pawn. The second rook is coming to e7, and that's it. G6 and then rook f7, rook g8 mate. Yeah, nice game by Aleksandr. Only couple of bad moves from Anastasia, but that was enough to lose the game. All right, and the last but not least goes on to 10, the game we started to look at first. Oh, we actually saw that game that black somehow lost a piece in the center, lost his knight on e4, and couldn't really prove any compensation here. Yeah, lost the second piece as well, and it's the black's king who actually was about to get mated, and white promote the queen. Black was hoping for some stalemate tricks, but didn't work out since queen f1 is a checkmate, and Omia Vidyarati is the fourth player who makes it to the semifinals. All right, so let's cover all the semifinalists from the open section till open under 10 till the girls under 18. All right, so as far as I see, under 10 section, boys. Václav Fajnak made it, the top seed. Mrinmoy from India, the 12th seed, made it as well, beating the 4th seed Chen Rio. Then Andy Woodward from the US won his match against Mendes Aaron Reeve from Canada. And then the last semifinalist is Sina Movahed from Iran, I believe. And he beat the Chinese second seed, 22-44 player Liu Miaoyi. So these are guys who qualified under 10, under 12 was a. Okay, hold on a second. It says that Seaman lost, but he actually won his game, right? Let's see, the Open 12. No, Seaman Yakub won his game. Yeah, he's qualified. Then Igor Samunenko from Ukraine qualified as well. Dmitry Mardov representing the US. He is the third semifinalist, and then the last one is Go Bach from the US, who beat Sava Vitohin, who's a 23-17 player. So that's a big surprise. Open under 14 section. Here we already have very strong players, and all of them, I believe, made it to the semifinals. Gukesh, the top seed, won a game in won the Armageddon game, so it wasn't easy for him as well, but he did qualify. Next one is Denis Lazarik from Belarus. He beat Metal Aditya from India. And then Christopher Yu won his Armageddon game against Danishvar Bardia from Iran. And Valdar Murzin got a little bit lucky, but beat Arthur Guo from the US. And these are the four guys who are facing each other tomorrow. All right, big upset in the under 16 section, as the favorite, the clear favorite, Kamer lost his Armageddon game against Jose Cardoso, and then Amir Reza Pour from Iran, he won his match against Kacharava Nicolosi from Georgia. Andrew Cohn, winning the first game in a weird fashion, qualifies for the semifinal as well. And then the second GM in the section from Denmark, Bjeri, he lost his match against the FIDE master from Germany, Frederick Swain. So that was a surprising result as well. So looks like this section has brought the most surprises so far. All right, so but under 18 section is surprising as well, since reigning favorite Andrei Sipenko lost to his opponent from Iran, Mahdi Galami. Sean Sarkisian marvelously made it to Armageddon, where he actually played a very nice game and won. So he is the second semifinalist. The first semifinalist is Hector Ramirez from Peru. The guy is rated only 21-17, beating all the GMs, beating all the IMs. I must say this is a little bit suspicious, although I know that the guys from South America, they usually underrated. So maybe that's not his real strength. And then the last but not least, Nihal Sarin beat Justin Wang in a very tricky endgame, which I thought was a dead draw, but somehow he outplayed his opponent and made it to the semifinals without Armageddon game. Girls under 10. So we got, again, the rating favorites, Victoria Smitanska from Poland losing to Elnaz Kaliahmed from Kazakhstan. Diana Preobrazhenskaya beat Alfana Emily from France. She's the second one. We saw the Armageddon of Shreya Hiparagi against Omia Vidirati. Omia made it here. She won the Armageddon game. And then Basharli against Melika Muhammadi, I believe, partially qualified for the next round. And girls under 12. Here we have the leader, the rating leader, Valeria Klemenova, actually winning her match. This is one of very few rating favorites who actually is still in the tournament. Zoe Tang beat Wendy Huang convincingly, winning both of the games. So did Alice Lee, beating Iris Mo. And then Aleksandr Schweder won the Armageddon game against Anastasia Kirtaza. We just saw that game. So these 4 girls who qualified in under 12 section. We also got a bunch of surprises in the under 14 section where Rochelle Wu actually won very convincingly against Savita, the EVO favorite. And then Gal Zoska beat Yan Ruyan from China in the Armageddon game. Liza Latifa, she won her game against April Joy Claras. And then the dash clash was in favor of Ellen Rubers, who beat Matchsel Van Forest, which I think was a little bit of a surprise, but at this stage anything can happen. So we got 2 sections left, and I don't think there was any big surprise in the under 16 section. So as Sobaeva Bibisara, who is the top seed, won her match against her Indian opponent. Song from China beat Aleksandr Muhammedov from Russia. Rakshita Ravi, yeah, that was a little bit of a surprise. She beat the Cuban Jill Hernandez, who didn't really play a good game in the Armageddon. And then Garifulina Lea, not very convincingly, but beat Evelyn Zhu. So she's one of the top seeds, and that's not a surprise, of course. Last but not least, girls under 18. Yeah, here we have no surprises whatsoever. The top 4 seeds leading the tournament. And as Carissa Yip won her match, Elizaveta Solozhenkina beat Priyanka from India. Talia Cervantes won her match against Ole from Canada. And Annie Wang also convincingly beat her opponent from Slovakia, Zala Ur. So in this section, we didn't even have any Armageddon. Everything ended in 2 games. So clearly shows us that the favorites here are probably much stronger than the rest of the field. But tomorrow they're going to have to face each other, and it's going to be very, very interesting. No favorites left. Everyone is around the same strength, so it's going to be even more fun to watch since we will have fewer games left and more time to focus on them, actually cover some more interesting stuff. All right, guys, so thank you everyone for watching. Tomorrow Evgeny Miroshnichenko will come back and replace me, so hopefully that was fun, and the tournament is definitely fun to watch for sure. And again, thank you, and see you tomorrow. Bye bye.